Daybreak on Arise News, and it's time for the press preview. A first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. Beginning with this day newspaper, leading with massive oil theft, high pipeline repairs cost, bleeding Nigeria's economy. An in-depth analysis by this day this morning. At 200,000 barrels per day, over $29 billion lost to theft in 6 years, and over 700 billion naira expended on repairs and maintenance. Also, President Buhari accuses National Assembly of inserting 887 billion naira into the 2022 budget as he sends 2.557 trillion naira supplementary budget for petrol subsidy in our Senate to amend 2022 Appropriation Act. Above the nameplate of this day this morning, at the NPA, no victor, no vanquished. Hadiza Bala Usman cleared and removed as Bello Koko now substantive MD.
Well, here's the front page of the Punch. Abba Kyari's brother received 279 million naira from Hush Puppy others. That's according to a police report being reported by Punch this morning. Says the police probes Kyari for 33 cases of money laundering and recommends demotion for embattled top cop. Well, the Punch is leading with photographs of the fuel scarcity lingering in the nation's capital, Abuja, as well as the country's commercial capital, Lagos. One more headline there. Fuel subsidy, federal government, states set for showdown over planned 950 billion naira FAC deductions. For many more, you can pick a copy of the Punch.
This is The Nation. Buhari governors meeting on APC convention fails to hold. Olubadan to be craves for younger monarchy in future. The ICPC blocks 189 billion naira unspent funds in ministries, and Bala Usman removed as Nigeria Ports Authority MD for insubordination.
The Guardian newspaper, leading with the fuel crisis, it says harder times loom as the fuel crisis lingers. Right as to that story, inflation decelerates slightly to 15.6%. Well, they say the data is a mockery of market reality. Food crisis not reflecting government's investment in agriculture, says Farmers Association, while the NNPC imports 2.3 billion litres as queues persist nationwide. A picture on The Guardian, front page of The Guardian, is President Muhammadu Buhari with the Minister of Women Affairs, Dame Pauline Tallen, and the FCT Minister during his departure to Brussels ahead of the EU-African Union Summit yesterday.
Let's take a look at the international papers, shall we? The FT, Financial Times, leads with the Ukraine crisis, with President Putin insisting he is still open to talks, while at the same time not reducing the apparent threat of an invasion of Ukraine.
And The Times, Biden doubts Russian withdrawal, and Duke agrees payout to settle sex assault case.
Well, The Guardian also leads with the Prince Andrew settles Giuffre's sex assault case out of court. Another headline here on The Guardian UK, Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, cautious on claims of Russia troop withdrawal.
Well, those are some of the headlines on the front pages from around the world this morning. For the press preview, let's bring in Emmanuel Bello to dissect some of the stories for us this morning, as usual. Emmanuel, great to see you. Good morning. Massive oil theft, high pipeline repairs cost, bleeding Nigeria's economy. This is coming as those few queues continue in Lagos, in Abuja, some places in Port Harcourt. We hear. What are we doing wrongly, Emmanuel, really?
Good morning, Adeso. Well, I think we're getting everything wrong. Well, I don't think we're getting anything right. And it's so, the story itself is a serious takedown on government and the failure of leadership. Yeah, and those skills, like you said, those are still really biting hard. There's still serious scarcity with even, those in charge saying that, look, this is going to persist for another 2 weeks. So there's no really end in sight. And then Emmanuel, this story in this day is a a great insight into, I think everyone should read these stories to see the sort of problems. Some of them well known already in the industry, some of the problems, the crisis of pipeline, the fact that the refineries are not working. But by and large, the huge issue of oil theft. This story delved into those crises of oil theft and how we have our own problems, it's an X-ray of the crisis, and I think government will avail itself a lot of support to go into this story where you have serious leadership. This is the sort of story. In fact, this is the sort of reports that even the reporter needs to be to be actually seen to talk more about some of these, because maybe there are issues that have not been expressed. But the story is very expressive, very detailed, pointing to the crisis that sometimes I'm sure some of the authorities probably don't know about, and they're the problem of those pipelines. But by and large, the crisis of theft, massive theft, the records are there, the data are there, the figures are attached to them, the amount of money, the amounts stolen per day. It's a very detailed story. I think, this is what we are saying. These are the sort of things that are wrong with the system. These probably are the bigger issue around the issue of those adulterated fuels and the crisis of the oil sector and the queues that you are seeing every day. The story goes into the very heart of the matter. The alarm is raising over those thefts that are going on, the bunkering in the Niger Delta region that's really causing a lot of problems. But it's not just the theft, it's also the lackadaisical attitude of government and governance in the area of repairs of pipelines and taking care of the very industry that the nation economy depends on. One of the areas that we annoy everyone is the fact that the world keeps waiting. The prices of this crude is doing very well in the market, and we just can't meet production. It's so annoying because it's a clear case of the world waiting for us, and we're not able to actually match the expectations out there.
Emmanuel, in the meantime, we still haven't heard of reprimands for any individual involved in this debacle. The Ministry of Petroleum Resources has not resigned. The minister has not been sanctioned. In fact, the minister is leaving town, and the queues continue. And here we are, a letter has been sent to the National Assembly requesting 2.557 trillion naira supplementary budget for petrol subsidy. Isn't this absurd?
Beyond absurd, it's actually annoying, and like I say, you can understand the national outrage, the anger, the annoyance when you read this sort of stories. And you're right, the fact that no one has been called to book, even those, the naming and shaming that was done earlier in the week, last week, identifying the companies, the oil major companies that brought in the adulterated fuel. It's almost as if it's been swept under the rug, and nobody's saying anything about it. So it's the sort of things that really annoy everyone. And yes, you have those stories about the National Assembly, the crisis of the budget again. And when you read all of that, especially during the midweek, you get a sense of the disconnect between leadership and the people. You get a sense of the despondency that we all find ourselves in, and the anger keeps rising. And those subsidies are still going to be paid for, as you saw in the report that has been inserted back there. Yet those queues, when you just look across the road, you see the queues, you see the suffering in a country where even the product has been subsidized. You begin to wonder what is really going on. Who is checking what? Who is taking responsibility? Why are heads not rolling? Why is this even allowed to just continue? Those are the sort of questions that get you really worried, concerned, and you begin to wonder if something serious is not seriously wrong somewhere. And yet the president jets out in the midst of all of that. You begin to wonder if anybody even cares about the suffering of the masses.
Manuel, now let's move over to some of the international papers this morning. The Guardian UK and the Daily Telegraph leading with that story on Prince Andrew, who has now settled out of court with Virginia Giuffre, the lady who's accusing him of sexual abuse and rape when she was 17. Now, this settlement, the Telegraph says, he will have to pay Virginia Giuffre and her charity more than £12 million. And what we know, the Telegraph is saying that the Queen, who has privately been funding his legal battles to tunes of millions of pounds, even as his titles have been revoked, is going to help him pay some of this settlement money. And also, in a joint statement, Prince Andrew took no liability, no apology. Instead, he says he regrets his association with Jeffrey Epstein. If he really is innocent and has never met Ms. Giuffre as he claims, why doesn't he just go to trial?
No, but if you follow this story from the start, you know, in case you will see what the prince was trying to do. He tried to dodge those trials. He tried to bribe his way, talk his way out of it, you know, but it was tough. Those things kept dogging him. And of course, thank God for the British tabloid that kept on the story and kept hammering. At a point, he has to actually, apart from forfeiting all his titles, you know, being stripped, you know, in a very disgraceful manner of every title is hard, especially those that will make him, you know, more than just like the rest of us, you know, those titles. But being a prince is, of course, he was born with that, so that wasn't taken away. But all other titles that gave him military or official functional powers were taken away from him. And then, of course, we saw him also selling some of his things, you know, in anticipation that this sort of settlement will happen. You call it hush money or settlements, but it's that's huge amount. So he's got this is the only option open to him, because those court cases were coming up, and they were going to actually be tough. And so probably he doesn't want any of those dramas, and so he settled with that huge amount of money. It's a very dramatic story, and especially because it is tied to the monarchy, especially now that the Queen too is celebrating her 70th year, you know, on the throne. It's the sort of story that this is not the way the Queen wanted to live or wanted to celebrate that important epoch in her life. But here it is, and she's still tied to the story from what we are reading, in the sense that this is her son, and she will have to do everything in her past to help him, you know, scale through this. So it's an interesting story, but the moral of it has not been lost on all that. Something you did close to 2 decades ago came back to haunt you, strip you of all your glory, disgrace you, and you suffered all sorts of shame, and now you are settling. He has settled with money, but of course, this will linger on his legacy and even, you know, his story. And when we are writing his biography someday, you have to look at this aspect of his life too. It's something that should be a lesson to anyone that is in power.
You have about 50 seconds to do this, Emmanuel. Some national stories I wanted us to touch on before the international papers. Abba Kyari's brother received 279 million naira, and that's according to The Punch, from Hush Puppy. This is beginning to look like a thriller of some sort. And then the APC convention on shaky grounds as President Sean's governors jets off to Belgium. That's been reported by a couple of papers this morning. Your thoughts, very quickly.
Well, yeah, the president jetting out is a big curious, because, I mean, it's next week. The APC convention is next week. And for the Abba Kyari story, you are right, it's a thriller. And if I'm to play a soundtrack for this, it will be that song that I keep hearing, saying crazy things are happening. And so the more you look at this story, the less you understand what's going on, but more revelations coming out. And it's a good thing that some of the papers are staying on the story, so that we can. Yesterday, the police, you know, trying to do a whole lot of reforms, even actually, you know, setting down some of the units. Yes, it's an interesting story. It goes to the very heart of the crisis of corruption in the country. And I think Transparency International will be looking at this to, you know, vindicate itself that, look, we say, this country is top on the list of corrupt nations, and these are some of the examples that were that gave us, you know, those statistics.
Much, Emmanuel Bello.